Yeah, like you were saying, people want there's predictability that's good and bad, and there's stuff where it's like we want to see that on the big screen. And the scrolls I've been anticipating in the MCU for years. We're 21 films in, and this was the first time one of the big villains was being introduced. And it's not just a single villain, it's a whole race. And then the unpredictability of, man, who could be a Skrull? Who of the Avengers could be a Skrull? And the fact that they just made the twist, it just let me down. Because these Skrulls, like from the comics, they are shape-shifting terrorists. That is what they are. They infiltrate planets and they bide their time. They're the definition of patience, because some Skrulls in the comics posed as humans for 20 plus years. And so the fact that they had this twist, one thing I got to address, Iron Man 3 had a similar twist in the sense that the Mandarin, Iron Man's like greatest villain in the comics, was revealed to just be an actor, and the real villain was Aldrich Killian. Spoilers for Iron Man 3. It's been up for 6 years. Regardless. I love Iron Man 3, and I love that twist. But when Iron Man 3 came out, the MCU was still... that was the beginning of Phase 2, but the MCU was not this juggernaut that it is now. And,
still the infancy, really.
Yeah, and so I love that twist because I didn't appreciate the Mandarin, and I hadn't been like reading up on the source material. At this point in the MCU, I know the source material, and I know where they're taking stuff from, and I was super excited for the Skrulls. So people who are let down by the Mandarin twist, I completely understand now because I was let down by this Skrulls twist. While I think the Mandarin twist works in Iron Man 3, that's because I think Iron Man 3 has just better elements, and the twist villain was a villain the whole time, and they weren't just switching the bad guys with the good guys. It's a cool idea, but I think the execution was just super poor.
Yeah, I mean, we learned that they're the good guys because a Pulp Fiction reference is being made as it happens, as he comes sipping the kind of soda in the same way Samuel Jackson's character did in the Pulp Fiction
cool
movie.
Callback. But...
it's kind of what I was looking it up. But that's how they made it seem. Like, he's like, oh, we're not really that bad, you know? Like, it seemed to come off like a comedy when it should have been, like, a revelation, you know? Like, I didn't like the way they set it up. It was funny, sure, but it was just completely emotionally pointless to, like, what they were setting up throughout the beginning of the movie to make these guys seem like these evil monsters.
Yeah. Just Ben Mendelsohn, I thought, did good in his role, but a lot of people are praising his performance overall. I thought he was better as a villain / S.H.I.E.L.D. agent.
Yeah.
And then when he became the good guy, I thought he was still good, but I didn't think it was anything special. And
he was just kind of a boring good guy.
Also,
interesting villain.
Also, going into the movie, I was so excited to see Ben Mendelsohn's scenes as Ben Mendelsohn as a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. We really only got one scene with him in that shape-shifting disguise. And then the rest of the movie, he was a Skrull, which that's what the plot called for. But I think there was a lot more potential to, if he stayed a villain, to have Fury trust him for so long. And I don't know.
It was cool. It was cool the way they figured out he was a Skrull when he called him Nicholas and not
Fury.
Nick. That was cool. I liked that.
Yeah, no, that was cool.
Fury, rather.
Yeah, but just the twist is where it lost me. And then moving on from there, we see in the climactic fight scene, one choice that I thought was odd and kind of slapped you over the head with it was when she has this fight scene and I'm Just a Girl is playing. I get it. This is definitely a feminist movie. Like, it's female empowering and all that. But the idea of having, not even the fact that the song is I'm Just a Girl, having any 90s song or any song with lyrics playing in a climactic fight scene, it takes away from the moment. Yeah. Like when she's fighting these Kree now, there's no stakes left because I'm Just a Girl is playing. Why would she be getting beat up when this like 90s song is playing? It's basically that type of song. When you have that playing in a fight scene,
it's like Guardians-esque. That works for Guardians.
And it feels like a song that would be playing during a montage where you're kicking ass the whole time, and rather this is supposed to be the climactic fight scene where she's supposed to struggle a bit, which is another gripe with my movie. She does not struggle, and we don't really learn a whole lot about Carol Danvers. Just the fact that when she's knocked down, she gets back up. That's that's what Rocky says in Rocky. Like, that's nothing new. At the very beginning of this movie, she's super powerful, and she's one of the most powerful Kree already. She has these photon blasts and all that. And then by the end of the movie, she takes off this little device on the back of her neck that's limiting some of her power, and then she becomes...
She's the most powerful thing in the world.
Super duper powerful after that. But the problem is, even though that was restricting her, it didn't affect anything. She was kicking ass at the beginning, not struggling whatsoever, and she kicked ass at the end. There was no difference. There was no arc. In Thor Ragnarok, a movie that I don't care for that much, at least we get Thor, who's like all-powerful Avenger, but at the beginning of the third movie, he loses his hammer, and he has to progress and realize he's more than just a weapon. He's the god of thunder. And that movie has a better arc, and that's the third movie. We already know who Thor is, and it gave him another layer. In Captain Marvel's first appearance on the big screen, I thought they just did not do her justice.
Yeah, I do completely agree with that. She just, she felt like... It felt like we already knew who she was, yet we don't know anything about her. Like, they made her seem like the best thing in the world, and they didn't prove to us why she was so great. They just she flew a plane, and she was able to not die from the blast. And it all seemed kind of lazy writing, if I do say. You know, it felt like lazy, quick writing to get the movie out, instead of, focusing on, what could have been a really emotional story. It just kind of fell flat.
Could not agree more. Another thing I want to bring up is the role of Maria Rambeau, played by Lashana Lynch, the role of her best friend in the Air Force. Terrible performance. Brie Larson I have gripes with, but I see potential in areas of improvement. Lashana Lynch, I don't know if this is miscasting or poor writing, but she did not convey to me that this is my first time. Like, Brie Larson, Captain Marvel, people think she is dead because she was in an Air Force crash and she has been living on another planet for years. And Lashana Lynch, I did not buy the chemistry. I did not buy that they had a previous friendship. And then later on, they bring Lashana Lynch as Maria Rambeau up into space to go on this space laboratory that it's revealed is housing a bunch of Skrull refugees that is going to try and find a home. And she doesn't look fazed by it at all. It looks like she's like, oh, just another day at the office going on to this spaceship with my friend who I thought has been dead for the past something years. Like, oh, God. Just not...
Yeah, she was like, first time in space, and she's like...
oh, whatever, like... You know, my daughter asked me to watch Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, but I have to go to space, whatever, just another,
Like, I don't think, I don't know, she just seemed unmemorable. I legitimately don't remember, a single line she said.
Yeah.
Bad writing doesn't knock acting, you know, it's, I think writing trumps, bad acting, because it's the writer's fault for writing bad dialogue.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's, delivery only comes when, the dialogue could have been good. I don't think the dialogue could have been good. Anything they gave her just kind of felt generic.
Yeah, and just her character and relationship with Carol Danvers, I did not buy. I did not care for, and yeah, it was in the second half of this movie, and, you know, even before the Skrull twist is when she's on, when she's at her house and everything, and that kind of took me out of the movie a bit. And, yeah, one thing I do want to give a shout to, I thought Gemma Chan as Minerva, she's one of the female Kree, soldiers. I thought she was actually pretty good.
Yeah. For the small amount of time she was in the movie, I think she...
Yeah, I think she has potential. She didn't die in this movie, did she?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, if she's not dead, I think she has potential to... We do see this movie set in the 90s, and we have characters like Ronan in the brief appearance he makes. We know that he eventually becomes an extremist villain in Guardians and dies. But Minerva, I think, has potential to break away from the Kree and become her own villain, and maybe we see her return in a sequel, because this movie, based on...
We know we're going to get a sequel.
Based on the box office alone, a sequel, not having a sequel would just be stupid, and it would just seem like catering to the people that hate it. Another question I have that I want to pose to you, Mike, is should more MCU movies be set in the past? After seeing this movie set in, I believe it's 96?
Yeah. I feel like flashbacks are okay, but I'd rather progress the MCU than help hold it back.
Yeah.
I like in a movie like a big long flashback that's fine because it's part of like the story. But like I feel like having like these movies that take place like years like later, like it's cool to see like that's how he got his scar on his eye. And a lot of
We will get into that after I give my response. Oh my god.
I feel like it's unnecessary to have any movies in the past. I think it only makes sense to progress the storyline instead of holding it back. Like it's an easy thing to do, so they don't have to think about like progressing. They just have to think about making stories. But I don't know.
Yeah,
I'd prefer stuff pushing forward.
The one aspect I'm going to disagree with you on is it's easier to do in the past because this movie, I feel one thing I love about the MCU is that everything's connected. It's unprecedented. There's nothing else in cinema like it. Often imitated, never duplicated with the MCU. The problem with this movie is the fact that it's in 96 and it's the 21st movie in the MCU. There were a lot of moving parts that they had to control, a lot of continuity that they couldn't break. And the problem I have,
they broke some stuff.
There's some continuity that they broke, and it's not so much glaring. Like it would be if Captain America showed up in this movie, clear break of continuity because we know he's frozen up until the first Avengers movie. Some of the continuity in this movie is broken. We just lost Mike, but we got him back. Mike, you're back?
Yeah, we're back. Yeah.
All right, perfect. Some of the continuity in this movie is broken, and just some of the plot point. Like, so what I'm referencing is in the first Avengers, Black Widow is talking to Hawkeye and tells him while they're fighting the aliens, this is nothing like we were ever prepared for. Well, in that case, now it just seems like Nick Fury is just an asshole because he knows this greater alien threat exists, and if he didn't prepare them for that, like, it's clear at the time of that line, it was nothing they were ever prepared for because it didn't exist. But now adding this layer, that line is weaker. And also there's a scene in Captain America the Winter Soldier where Nick Fury is talking to Alexander Pierce, and there's a picture of them together in the early days of S.H.I.E.L.D., and Nick Fury has a mustache and both eyes. But now we know that picture is just retconned because he loses his eye when he has a full head of hair and no mustache. Like, it's just little things like that just make this movie feel like they didn't do their job in terms of like really researching the MCU. Yeah. And I know people are like, well, it's just a movie. At this point, the MCU, it's a whole nother thing. And if you're going to make a movie set in the past, there's a lot of moving parts you have to control and a lot of factors you got to take in. And I feel like the directors of this movie, let me get their names real quick, Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck, I feel like this was just a poorly directed movie and a poorly thought out movie. And yeah, like going forward with that, I agree with Mike that more movies should be set in the present because it progresses the story.
That's where we are.
Progresses the story forward, and also when you're in the past, you have a lot of moving parts to control. And also, one thing we can touch on is the very ending of this movie. Nick Fury is typing out the Protector Initiative, then he looks at a picture of Carol Danvers as the pilot. And it says her call sign is Avenger. And so then he changes Protector Initiative to Avenger Initiative. The problem there, it's cool to see everything tied back together. But now when you go back and you see the Iron Man post-credit scene, he says, I'm here to talk to you about the Avenger Initiative. Just for me, it loses some weight because Captain Marvel in a poorly executed movie and the 21st movie in the MCU, no hint of her before, where Black Panther we got, him in Civil War and then his own standalone movie. It just feels unwarranted. It feels undeserved. The fact that she is the inspiration for the fact that they're called Avengers, that seems very nitpicky of me to say, but at the same time, I think it's a lot of people's gripes with, like, if Captain Marvel comes in and defeats Thanos 1 month after being introduced to us, it feels undeserved.
It does. Like, it'd feel pandering to an audience that specifically wants, like, it's not wrong to want representation, but, like, you gotta also realize that, like, she, like, as you said, she just came into this. Like, sure, let her kick Thanos' butt, but she can't be the one who does the finishing blow. She can't be.
I mean, if you're working at a job